He is the only liberal talk show host in the state of Nevada, Doug Basham. Doug, what's going on, my friend?
Yo, Semites, it is what it is. Just read the manuals and the books.
Yo, Semites.
Yeah, it was funny.
We're going to play that audio.
Was very funny, Doug.
We kind of have a best of for all those people that think Joe Biden, with all the gaffes, and he's seen we have some different mispronunciations by the president. But, Doug, I want to get your first reaction. Did you get a chance to listen to our interview with Hogan Gidley?
I did.
What did you think? What did you think of it?
He's very polished, but then every one of Trump's designated liars is, or they don't get the job. My personal opinion is, a long time ago, I stopped making the distinction between guests who were polite and liars and callers who weren't polite and liars. To me, I just put them all in the same boat.
Yeah, and I understand, and every host has a different technique. Certainly, we'd like to get more guests in the Trump administration on. There's a lot of pullback, and I probably could have pulled back a little bit more on some of the things he said, but I had a couple problems. Number one is I want to be gracious and I want to be respectful, but number two, we also have time constraints. And if you know, Hogan was very long-winded, and I think I only got several questions in there, so a little difficult.
And by the way, that's done by design.
Yeah,
it prevents you from asking more questions or follow-ups.
That is true, and I do understand that, and that's why I try to signal.
Actually, I had some really good questions.
Well, I was trying to signal to JD to interrupt.
I had two great ones.
When I make these hand gestures, it's not a
he was on a roll, Brian.
Okay, when I make these hand gestures, it's not a masturbation hand gesture. It's a hand gesture to get you to interrupt, JD.
I mean, Brian,
let's be clear on that.
You are a sexual deviant, so how would I know that?
I'm serious, Doug. When I make these hand gestures, he probably thinks I'm doing something underneath the console or something. I'm not. I'm trying to get him to interrupt.
I can only hope that is not the case.
Sometimes you have to interrupt.
Your story, and you're sticking to it.
I'm sticking by it.
Personally, I think you're a sexual deviant, Brian.
Yes,
absolutely.
I definitely am. Okay, Doug, let's move on to mail-in voting. We've been having this debate. I think it's absurd. There's no evidence to support the fact that Nevada has had, on a massive scale, like the President of the United States is talking about, which are baseless, according to the Nevada Secretary of State's office. She said it herself, that mail-in ballots automatically sent to the voter and absentee ballots, there's really no difference other than that. What do you say?
Well, I'll tell you what amazes me about this whole mail-in ballot issue. Donald Trump throws a mouse on the floor, and all his minions chase the mouse, doing everything they can to prove Trump right. Like the guy who called you earlier and said some dead cat received a ballot.
Right.
I mean, they're doing the same thing with this they did with hydroxychloroquine, and they're ignoring the guy who threw the mouse on the floor, and more importantly, why he threw it. And firstly, the irony of the biggest liar and cheater in the country complaining about election cheating, I mean, this is projection because that's what he would do. It's what he's done. It's what he's doing now. But rather than chase the mouse, let's look at the guy who threw it. This has nothing to do with mail-in voting or it being fraudulent. It has everything to do with Trump refloating the same trial balloon he did in his interview with Chris Wallace. He's setting the stage for him to reject and contest the results of the election when he loses, which he will if it's a fair election. People who are confident they're going to win don't go out of their way to destroy people's confidence in their electoral process, and that's what he's doing, and there's a reason for it.
I think he's actually very confident that he's going to win, and I'm confident as well. And I mentioned a poll a couple days ago called the Rasmussen poll, which Brian says has no credibility, but as of late June, the Rasmussen showed Trump was at 42%. Now he's at 51%. And as far as that cat, there was actually a cat in Georgia, a cat that had been dead for 12 years that did receive a ballot. That did take place.
Well, that's fine, but my point is, I'm not going to chase the mouse that Trump threw on the floor. I'm going to chase Trump.
Well, I'll tell you who is chasing that mouse is CNN, MSNBC, ABC.
Yeah.
They did the exact same thing with Ghislaine Maxwell when he said that he wished her well,
which he said again, by the way.
And he explained as why that was because he doesn't want her to die.
Mm-hmm. That makes.
But my question is to you, Doug, and we haven't gone about this, but why is ABC and MSNBC and CBS and even Fox to an extent, why are they not talking about the fact that Bill Clinton was placed on the Little St. James with two young women, with Jeffrey Epstein? Why is that not being discussed? Why don't they chase that mouse?
I would hope it's because it's irrelevant to the larger picture of what this country faces and the danger it faces, and that is Donald Trump being reelected. Bill Clinton and whatever he did in the past has less than zero to do with the dangers we're facing now, as in Donald Trump trying to destroy people's confidence in the electoral process by attacking mail-in voting.
By the way,
that's what matters. What Bill Clinton did doesn't. If he is guilty, he's guilty, and he should pay the price.
Yes.
But in the larger picture of what we're facing as a nation now, it's irrelevant.
Well,
but you don't think it's an issue though that after? I mean, if this was Trump, if Trump was in that situation, even if he wasn't, well, let's say after he's president. Let's say after he's president, and this is Trump in the exact same situation. By the way, Virginia Giuffre or Roberts Giuffre, she stated specifically that she actually met Epstein at Mar-a-Lago working for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was not at the island ever when she was there. She made that very clear. So Trump was not involved in that. But if this was Trump, how big would the media reaction be on behalf of ABC, MSNBC, et cetera, et cetera?
He's the president right now.
I'm saying after he's president, it would still be massive. I mean, Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. He was one of the 45 presidents of the United States. That's a pretty big deal. His wife was almost the president of the United States.
Go ahead, Doug.
What I don't understand is that Brian began this segment by asking me about mail-in voting, and now you're deflecting to Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein.
Doug, we've talked about mail-in voting for an hour and a half today. That's the only reason why.
Okay, well, we're talking.
We can keep talking about it if you want to.
So I haven't.
All right.
Well, there's a major difference between absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, and Hogan explained that very well. I've explained it as well.
Quickly, in 20 seconds, let me just go to what JD is. First of all, we were talking about a cat that received a vote. Let me be very clear on this. The only pussy cat is the man who dodged the military 5 times. So let me just be clear on that one, number one. Number two, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton's scandals. I'm not defending Bill Clinton, but let me just say this, and I will say it again because, JD, I know you know this, but conservatives don't want to hear about this. It was Donald Trump's own ex-wife that accused him of rape in court documents. Donald Trump has 25-plus women that have either accused him of rape or sexual assault. He has kids with 3 different women. So stop it with the nonsense of the Bill Clinton sexual stuff. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, you have zero credibility in talking about Bill Clinton. All right, Doug, now we can go back to the voting situation.
Was Donald Trump's wife
accused Trump of rape?
Yeah, was Donald Trump's wife of age, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, well, these girls weren't.
Last I checked, when you're of age, you still can't rape somebody. It's an idiotic statement on your part.
And obviously, it went nowhere.
Actually,
went nowhere.
You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I will give you the facts once again because you're talking about something and you don't know what you're talking about. It was in court documents. Donald Trump paid her a lump sum to keep her mouth shut. If she didn't bring up that stuff, she probably wouldn't have received the money that she got. So you are factually inaccurate. It is in a court document. She said that Donald Trump raped her. I don't know. I mean, witnesses did say, by the way, that Clinton was with young women, but never said that they were underage, and it's never been proven. That is very important to note.
She said specifically they were young girls.
Okay. Witnesses said that Clinton was with young women, but never said they were underage. The definition of young and underage are 2 completely different things.
When it involves Jeffrey Epstein, it does.
You can come up with your own narratives all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that nobody said that Bill Clinton was with a woman that was underage.
The reason that this is as big of a deal as it is because Jeffrey Epstein was doing these things with women that were not of age, which is considered statutory rape.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, Doug, I guess we can move on. I want to talk a little bit about the Axios interview that Donald Trump did on HBO. Let's start, Sean, if we may, with the coronavirus cut and the crisis, talking about 1,000 lives that are being lost a day. Have a listen to this.
Right now, I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can. It's under control as much as you can control it. This is a horrible plague that beset us.
You really think this is as much as we can control? 1,000 deaths a day?
I'd like to know if somebody, first of all, we have done a great job. We've gotten the governors everything they needed. They didn't do their job. Many of them didn't, and some of them did. Someday we'll sit down. We'll talk about the successful ones, the good ones. Look at that smile. The good ones and the bad. We had good and bad, and we had a lot in the middle. But we had some incredible governors. I could tell you right now who the great ones are and who the not-so-great ones are. But the governors do it. We gave them massive amounts of material.
Doug, 1,000 people are dying a day, but it is what it is. What's your response to that?
It's typical of Trump. I mean, it was just reported today that somebody inside the White House told a reporter he still doesn't get it. He never has. He's never taken it seriously. And by the way, JD, did you notice that Jonathan Swan brought up my South Korea comparison?
I did not. No, I didn't actually watch that interview.
Yeah, he said 52 million population. They have 300 deaths. And, of course, Trump reverts back to his old, well, we're doing more testing than anyone in the world.
Which we are.
Late to the game, and it spread so bad, we have to.
Well, so, we had the CDC issue. There was a bunch of tests were malfunctioning basically at the plant. You had the fact that China did not. I mean, and then keep in mind, Doug, Donald Trump was being impeached at the beginning of this year.
Doug,
it's not like Nancy
JD,
Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and these Democrats were gung-ho for stopping this virus. They were more concerned with impeaching Donald Trump.
Hang on a second. Doug and JD, Doug, that part of that interview that you were talking about, we have that. So let's play that for everybody, and then we'll respond. Go ahead.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad. Much worse than South Korea, Germany, etc.
You can't do that. Why can't I do that? You have to go by where. Look, here is the United States. You have to go by the cases. The cases.
Why not as a proportion of population?
When we have somebody. What it says is when you have somebody that has where there's a case, the people that live from those cases.
It's surely a relevant statistic to say if the US has X population and X percentage of death of that population versus South Korea.
You have to go by the cases.
Well, look at South Korea, for example. 51 million population, 300 deaths.
How many cases?
It's crazy.
You don't know that.
I do.
You don't know that.
You don't know that. Doug, what's your response to that?
Doug Basham, ahead of the curve. I said that weeks ago.
You did. I give you credit for that.
Here's the thing. What was interesting about that interview with Jonathan Swan, did you see that chart he pulled out and handed Swan?
Yes, I did.
I did a big, what they call deep dive on that 3 or 4 weeks ago when he did the same thing, or I guess
rabbit hole.
2-3 weeks ago when he handed a chart to Chris Wallace and then immediately pulled it back. He handed him the chart of cases, or I should say deaths per case in the nation. That is a very deceptive thing because if you catch it at the point where you've got a lot of cases but the deaths haven't caught up, you look like you're doing a good job, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, Doug, do you know how many cases South Korea has had?
Do that chart.
Do you know how many cases they've had total?
Do I know how many cases they've had total?
Yeah.
We're like 80,000 short of 5 million.
No, I'm talking about South Korea.
Oh, South Korea? I'd have to look that up.
Well, I mean, what Trump is talking about is the mortality rate. The mortality rate has dropped significantly. It's almost
no. He wasn't talking about the mortality
I know,
rate.
but
He was talking about the case.
And then he's also
rate.
saying what he's saying is he doesn't believe that China's numbers are right. So, considering the fact that South Korea is near China, that their numbers may not be right either. That's what he's saying. He's saying that South Korea is not giving the correct numbers.
Trump doesn't trust other people's numbers.
That's
because
fine.
If he could, and who knows if he is, he would fudge ours.
But the issue is with the United States, we're probably the least. We're probably.
Line is simple. We have more cases and more deaths than any other country.
I'm not suggesting that that's
world,
not true.
period.
What I'm saying is the issue with the United States is that we are probably set up the worst. A country that's set up the best for something like this is a socialist country who has one person who makes decisions for the entire country who can say, yes, everything has to lock down. We have to do this right now. That's not the United States. We have 50 states. We have 50 governors. They all make their own decisions.
Yeah, and it helps when you don't have a buffoon running the country.
We're just not set up well for a situation like this.
Well, I agree with you. With Trump leading the country, I agree.
And Doug, did you hear the interview with Hogan? One interesting thing that he said that we have not talked about. He said that 65% of all cases in the United States originated in New York. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
And after what, we know for a fact de Blasio as late as...
Why is that, JD? Because when people fly into the country, they don't go to Georgia. They go to New York or L.A.
Right. Well, de Blasio, and he said that Cuomo didn't shut down for 7 days after he should have. He forced people into nursing homes. You got to keep in mind that I think 55% of all deaths in the United States have taken place in nursing homes. And then you look at what de Blasio said on March 7th when he said, yeah, just live your life, New Yorkers. Okay. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. So you have to factor that in as well. You can't just put all the blame on Trump. Now, one thing Trump did do that I disagree with, I love the travel ban to China, but he should not have let Chinese, American citizens who were in China come back. He should not have done that, in my opinion.
Well, I don't see how you can keep American citizens out of here. Plus the fact he kept letting people come in until the middle of March when our testing wasn't up to snuff, which, again, I don't blame him for doing. Most of those people were Americans. You can't keep them out of your own country. But for him to suggest that he built this impermeable wall between the United States and China is just a joke. And by the way, you're talking about New York and nursing homes?
Yeah.
That was back when? February, March?
That was so actually on the 17th of March, the White House issued a statement that said, they basically strongly recommended that no nursing homes take in COVID-19 patients. On March 25th, Andrew Cuomo put out a statement, and several other governors did this too, that forced nursing, or a directive that forced nursing homes to take patients that were positive with COVID-19. And that ended up with about 12,000 deaths that shouldn't have taken place. Nationwide, had that not taken place, had Massachusetts and New York and New Jersey and California and Michigan and Pennsylvania, had they not done that, we'd be looking at almost 50,000 less deaths than we have right now.
Let's switch.
It'd be a very long flu season.
Okay, so let's got to switch subjects a little bit here. If you're just joining us, Doug Basham on the line, the only liberal talk show host in the state of Nevada, does a show on Saturdays 2 to 4 p.m. So the interview on Axios went on to systemic racism and police brutality. We just had Hogan Gidley on, and I said, this is one of the reasons why I can't stand Trump. I might have used other terms, but I said the reason why I don't like Donald Trump, here, he defends the Confederate flag. He goes after NASCAR. And Hogan Gidley's response is, well, he didn't really have an opinion on the Confederate flag. How can you be the president of the United States and not have an opinion on the Confederate flag? That's number one. Let me play this cut for you, Doug, and then I want you to respond to it. This is Donald Trump in this Axios interview on racism and police brutality.
Do you believe, though, Mr. President, that many police treat black people differently from white people?
Well, I hope not. Certainly
You've seen the statistics.
the knee on the neck was a disgrace, okay?
Yeah.
It was a disgrace.
I'm talking about, what does systemic racism mean to you?
I hope the answer to that question is no. Does anybody really answer that question accurately?
But what
Does
about not
anybody
hope?
really know?
What about analysis? What's your cold-hearted
I have
view of it?
seen where there is a difference, and I don't want there to be a difference. I don't like that there would be a difference. But with that being said,
why do you think black men are
police have
2.5
killed
times?
white people.
I know, but why do you think black
in
men
a larger number,
in quantity?
police have killed white people.
But why do you think black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men?
That I don't know, but
Why? Why do you
I
think
don't
that?
like it.
I don't like it. Doug, what's your response to that?
My response to that, to Trump's response to that question, is the same as for pretty much every response he gave in that interview. If you watched that interview with Jonathan Swan and you didn't come away just reeking with the manifest unfitness and incompetence of this man and realize that he is in way over his head, doesn't understand any of the statistics with regards to COVID-19, and shouldn't be there, I don't know what to say.
JD?
Well, I'll tell you this: the stats, the reason why African Americans are likely to be killed by a police officer at a 2.5 times higher rate is because African Americans commit 6 times the violent crimes do than Caucasians. That's what the statistics say.
Okay, but we're talking about
that particular race happens to be in that position, to be in a position to be killed by police significantly more often than a Caucasian person is. And also you have this. I think there's a lot of reasons why actually, and the statistics, and William Barr said the exact same thing. The statistics do not support the fact that there is rampant systemic racism. I think there is individual racism. The Ahmaud Arbery situation, for example, what happened in Georgia, clear example of that. The police department literally tried to cover up what actually happened because they were friends with the McMichaels. And they told his mother, so I think that takes place, but I don't think you have rampant systemic racism. And then, like I told you 2 days ago, Brian, a lot of police chiefs nationwide are African-American. A lot of mayors are African-American.
Doesn't mean there's not racism. That's absurd. And by the way, Congress,
a lot of police officers, you interrupted me, and a lot of police officers are also African-American, Brian.
So just because somebody's African-American or a mayor is African-American suggests that there can't be racism because of that is absurd.
No, I'm saying there's a much smaller chance that there's rampant systemic racism. Systemic. Also, not that you're conflating systemic racism and individual basis racism.
I want to jump Doug in here. Also, the fact that Congressman Scott has said he's been pulled over 10 times because he's black. You cannot convince me there's not systemic racism. Doug, what do you say?
And I would say that one could make the chicken and the egg scenario. Perhaps there wouldn't be the stat JD gave me with regards to crime if there wasn't systemic racism.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more.
We're talking about violent crimes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stop a violent crime from taking place.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't. There's a difference between a violent crime and being followed by a police officer. There's a major difference there. When you're committing a violent crime, it's robbery, it's assault, it's rape, it's murder. I mean, it's several. It's not a traffic violation. It's not being followed by the police.
Agreed, but it's not necessarily an isolated situation or example. Again, which came first, the violent crime or the systemic racism?
Well, and I can tell you this, Doug. In 2017, the Caucasian population is about 72%. African Americans roughly 13%. There were 157,512 violent crime arrests for Caucasians. There was 151,744. That's only 6,000 less,
and
with
Doug's
6
point is
times
the
less
same.
the population.
Which I would respond, systemic racism started before 2017.
I don't. That doesn't seem relevant to me at all, Doug, but fair enough.
Well, you're giving me a 2017 stat. I'm saying systemic racism started a long time before that, and I don't think you can dismiss one without accounting for the other. What came first?
Why do we only talk about it
racism?
when situations like the George Floyd death take place and they happen to be in election years? Why do we not talk about this a couple of years ago? Why was it not a major conversation?
First of all, that is absurd.
No, it's
what
not.
You just said.
At this level,
Why have we
when
not
when Barack Obama was president of the United
How
States.
about the congressman who just died? He did it his entire life. What the hell are you talking about? They've been talking about systemic racism for hundreds of years.
I'm talking where it's literally integrated into sports, into every single thing that we do. Like when a mural is painted in front of Trump Tower in New York
Have you
City.
ever heard of Muhammad Ali?
And there was no permit for that. No, yeah, I'm one sport. I'm talking every single sport. Everywhere you go right now, it's systemic racism.
Okay.
It's racism this, racism that, and it
When
does
a moment's
not.
time has
There
come,
is no such
a
thing
moment's
as.
time has come.
How about Tamir
Okay.
Rice, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Philando Castillo?
Yeah,
What the heck
let's
are you
talk about
talking
Michael Brown, Brian.
It's been talked about. You
What
just said
happened?
it hasn't been
What
talked about.
What happened with Michael? Yeah,
You just said it hasn't been talked about.
When was that?
All right, I gotta let Doug go. Doug,
Okay.
Doug, we're gonna get heated here because
That's fine.
this conversation really gets me going. But Doug, tell me, we only got about a minute here. Tell me what you got going on this Saturday.
Well, I think we're probably going to hit the voting by mail issue. I'm definitely going to do some of that Jonathan Swan interview because that was the most telling interview Trump has ever done.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and we played a few cuts of it. We played some cuts of it yesterday. Doug, I know you're going to have a field day with that, my friend, and I look forward to your show on Saturdays as I listen to it every week, 2 to 4 p.m. Glad you're here at KDWN. Doug, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure, guys. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot, Doug.
The only point I'm trying to make, and then we got to take a break here, is that systemic racism and racism has been talked about for decades and decades and hundreds of years. The atrocities and the things that people have faced in society. And, that's just a fact. It didn't just happen because of George Floyd. It didn't just happen because of Ahmaud Arbery. It's been happening for decades and hundreds of years.